We had a 5-year turnaround programme. It was in 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, stop the rot. Phase 2, one way. Phase 3, to be the best. Phase 1 was all about making the basics happen. Make trains run on time, make sure every single project delivers on time and to cost, and sort out West Coast. Phase 2, one way, standardise what we do, introduce standard ways of working, more efficient processes. And Phase 3, all about being the best. Wherever you are, whatever you do, be the best in the world at doing that, and that will create a world-class, best-in-class company. During the early stages of our recovery programme, the objective was to improve 7 key parts of the business: safety, the performance and the capability of the network, our relationship with external stakeholders and our customers, financial control, the way in which we look after our assets, and overall business improvement.
When we had completed our audit, because that's essentially what it was, we knew there were an awful lot of things that needed to fix. In fact, there were too many to handle. So we made a very, very simple decision. We had to separate the urgent from the important and deal with the urgent before we could deal with some of the other things that were necessary for the long-term benefit of the organisation, but wasn't going to fix today's punctuality. That's what we were focused on right away.
When the top team from Network Rail came into the company, it was personally a very challenging time. All of one's terms of reference had disappeared and needed to make completely new relationships with the people and to understand what it was that they wanted. And quite rightly, they came in with a very strong change agenda, a very clear perspective on what they wanted to do and a set of action plans to do that. And the attitude was very much, will you step up to deliver that or you step out? So really needed to take on board the changes that were needed and marry that at the same time to my experience, if you like, of what was required. And I think it's fair to say that that was great. It was exciting and challenging, but it also was very unsettling from a personal point of view.
By the time the Network Rail management turned up, we were really looking forward to it. We'd been through several difficult years. The train crashes, the debates with the regulator, the financial problems, the West Coast problem and so on, and we wanted a way out of that. It wasn't easy continuing to run the railway while all those things were happening, and then we'd been through administration as well. What we were now looking for was consistency, leadership, direction, stability. We were all desperately keen to get away from where we'd been and make this thing better.
What we had to do immediately was hit the ground running. We had made a number of plans before we had got into rail track, but we had to execute them. One of the first things was to get control of costs, to understand where the money was going. Another area that we thought we must get control of was one of recruitment. We, as an exec, took the decision that every new appointment in the company had to come to the exec. We wanted to see job descriptions. We wanted to check whether the recruitment was actually necessary, whether or not there was resources elsewhere in the company that could be used rather than the continual increase in recruitment. And that also gave us a very clear idea of the amount of expenditure and resource that was being deployed within the company.
We knew we wanted to move to a functional organisation the following year, and yet we also knew we had to streamline the company as well. And so Project Violet was a programme that was put in place to do exactly that, but in a very selective way. And we wanted to use selectivity, scale and speed in the way that we went about doing it. So we ranked each one of the 4,500 managers. We took out the bottom 12.5%, which was 600 managers, and they left the business in an 8-week period, within 8 weeks. And that was really the first time that the rest of the organisation saw that this management team was serious about making fundamental change. And it was also a message to the very good people that we had within the organisation that we were going to support their changes in a way that moved the business forward.
When we first set up the business, we established what we call monthly business reviews, where we went around the whole country and reviewed each of the business sectors. That required all of the managers, senior managers, middle managers, to produce quite a lot of detail for these reviews, and I believe that caused quite a lot of concern and tension to the extent that we wanted to manage the business in this way, which clearly they had not been used to in the past.
This was an unusual acquisition. We were taking into a company in desperate need of change and change very quickly, just 12 people, and they were going to try and affect a whole organisation. So we need to bring into this organisation the very best people, people with expertise in technical areas, business areas and turnaround expertise. And we're going to have to impress upon the organisation the need to change very quickly, and that was a really big challenge in the early days.
One of the biggest challenges we had when we first took over was, as Railtrack was made up of regional businesses, we had many different ways of doing things within the company. That was inefficient. It caused a lot of confusion to the many suppliers that we worked with every day. And from a Network Rail point of view, we had a very different plan. We wanted to have one company and one way of doing things across that whole company and across the whole railway.
One of the biggest changes had taken place, and that was introducing people to the idea that the old zones, which had had so much local power, were going to be replaced by the functional structure. And through the functional structure, we were going to get a consistent way of doing things across the whole business. Really a complete change from what had gone before, where zonal power had been enormous and people had got used to being able to do things differently across the country, which we saw as a fundamental weakness.
There were zones, there was regions, different ways in different parts. It was very confusing, both for us as a management team and, of course, for our customers that had to interface to it. So we decided to standardise on a single area structure, 18 plug-and-play units which would form together to deliver the railway services. And each of those 18 areas would have exactly the same job titles, job descriptions, ways of doing things and processes. And that would be a building block for the future.
As we knew, a lot needed to be done in Railtrack. We had spent a great deal of time working up the plans and the strategy before October 2002. But obviously, once we were there, the only way they could be executed was with the support, the engagement of the staff. So quite quickly, we had to find out who in the staff, who of the managers in the company had the same, shared our values. We're trying to reach the same objectives that we were trying to reach, and bring them along into development of the Network Rail values, the Network Rail disciplines, and that takes time, that takes support. It takes a bit of understanding, a bit of coaching, a bit of sharing expectations of what we expect of people within the company.
One of the big challenges we had in dealing with the people within the company and the leaders, the senior people within the company, was on the one hand, yes, they'd been through difficult times in administration, but we wanted a high-performing company, and that meant that we had to take tight control. We had to be extremely challenging in how we wanted to run the business, and people needed to understand their part of the business. But also at the same time, we had to deal with that in a sensitive way and in supporting staff through the challenges that we gave them.
When we first came into the organisation, confidence in the company was low, but optimism was high. We had the support of our stakeholders, but they really would not support us in the long term unless we sorted out the very basics of safety and performance, and we had to raise that and raise it very quickly.
When we took over the company, we knew that there were a number of concerns regarding safety, both within the company and within the industry, and therefore safety was one of our top priorities. So as part of that, as we came in, we introduced a number of new systems and new processes and procedures within which to manage safety. And then part of our investment program going forward was a substantial increase in the amount of investment going into the track assets and thereby improving the safety of the whole railway.
After about 18 months of the change structure and organisation, we could see real benefits coming through. We could see delay minutes decreasing. We could see punctuality improving. We could see fewer complaints from customers. And indeed, we started to receive some plaudits from the customer associations. Even the train operators were starting to recognise that things were getting better. That, of course, leads to an improvement in morale. It probably also started to enable us to be more open with our customers. And in fact, by being again more open, they started to trust us more. And so this gradual improvement on increasing trust just built one on the other so that things just generally started to get a lot better.
What we were trying to do from an early stage was make sure that any non-essential expenditure was cut out and make sure that money that was spent gave value for money. And we did this by ensuring that most of the expenditure came up in the company to a very senior level, indeed came to the executive, and in that process we ensured that there was more planning in terms of the expenditure that was requested. There was more risk analysis in terms of the expenditure that was being asked for. And that very process itself made the managers in the organisation think twice. It made them think, what are they going to be asked? What are they going to have to explain? And that itself had a very positive impact down the organisation.
In early 2003, we decided to carry out a detailed analysis of maintenance and the options for managing maintenance going forward. One of the options we looked at was clearly to bring maintenance back in-house, and the team within a few months carried out a very detailed analysis of the risks, the benefits, and, as I said, the options for maintenance going forward. Around June, July 2003, we had a number of detailed discussions at the board level. Those discussions were very wide-ranging, and the conclusion of those discussions was that we should be bringing maintenance back in-house and take direct control of that as Network Rail. When we announced we were bringing maintenance back in-house, this was seen as, by the industry, as a very big decision and a very key decision for the railway, in particular with Network Rail taking back control of maintenance of the core assets for the railway. We got support from the train operating companies, the freight operating companies, government, and other stakeholders, which was great.
Building a relationship with the trade union is clearly very important to the success of the business strategy overall. And the trade unions have a very long, proud history in the rail industry, and so it's very important that we pay attention to them. In doing that, we've established a new single collective bargaining agreement. We've re-established national negotiation on the maintenance side, and more importantly, in my view, we've actually created an area council structure driven by line managers and by local reps, so that we can resolve issues at the lowest level within the company.
The constant criticism by customers, train operators of Railtrack was that it saw itself as the all-powerful centre, and indeed described itself as the heart of the railway. This led to mistrust and some antagonism. It also probably led the people in the organisation to believe that they didn't have to care about customers and the people they dealt with. So for us at Network Rail, it was fundamental to get people to understand customers were important. And so we started to talk about Network Rail being part of the railway, working with the other parts rather than being the all-dominant centre of the railway.
When Network Rail was created and it took over Railtrack, we recognised the fundamental importance of improving relationships with all parts of the industry. That obviously included improving relationships with the rail regulator, which were somewhat strained from the history. We wanted a genuine partnership with train operators, with the regulator in the background. That meant that we needed to be seen to be taking forward the issues, be seen to really dealing with the underlying problems in the industry, and taking a balanced approach, a proportionate approach, so that we could be trusted. That would all help us move towards a lighter touch regulation, even towards self-regulation, where we were taking responsibility, but with the regulator involved in the process and able to intervene where necessary.
The communications at Network Rail was an integral part of the business change strategy. We had to make sure that the messages that went out in the internal domain matched the external domain. We have many stakeholders from the government, from local authorities, as well as passengers and customers, plus 32,000 employees, and it was absolutely vital that all of those matched so people understood what we were doing. And ultimately, it was about controlling the message, having consistency of that message, and managing expectations. A key part of the work was to build trust and a great relationship with the government as we moved forward. And an important element of that was finding out what their expectations were, what the targets were that they wanted, and then making sure that not only did we deliver to those targets, but that we exceeded their expectations.
The Future of Rail White Paper gave Network Rail some additional responsibilities, which really reflected some of the progress that we'd made as a business and as an industry. both in terms of dealing with many of the underlying problems, but also in terms of improving the relationships across the industry. So we were asked to play a bigger role in terms of coordinating overall industry performance. We were asked to provide more of a leadership role in terms of longer-term planning for the industry and strategic planning. And we were asked to play more of an active role in developing the detail of specific projects that were required to deliver the growth in the railway.
When we look back over the last 3 years, the company itself has come an enormous way. If you look back at comparisons between staff morale, staff engagement, staff motivation from day one of TAGA through to now, we've seen a massive improvement in that, and people are engaged in what we do, and in the company we see many projects delivered on time within budget, and the company really moving forward in a progressive way. So it's a great place to be at this point.
We've made real progress in the last couple of years. Performance has improved, cost control's improved, planning's improved, and indeed the attitudes of the staff have improved, which is all good news. But we've still got a long way to go. We've got some very significant challenges, and we are all the time trying to raise the bar to ensure that we carry on with the momentum that we've started up and give people encouragement to deliver to the objectives that we've set ourselves.